For 25 years, one badge has ruled Australian roads without serious challenge. Not Ford. Not Holden. Even before Holden died. Toyota, the HiLux in every tradie's driveway. The RAV4 in every suburban garage. The Land Cruiser hauling caravans down every outback highway. It was less a car brand and more a piece of the national furniture. Then in June 2026, something happened that nobody in Melbourne, Sydney or Nagoya thought they'd see this decade. A Chinese company most Australians couldn't have picked out of a lineup 3 years ago came within 243 cars of dethroning Toyota as Australia's #1 automotive brand. Not 243,000, 243. Read that number again. BYD didn't just squeeze past Ford, it bulldozed Ford. It buried Ford. It relegated the Blue Oval, the maker of the almighty Ranger, to the third step of the podium, and stared directly at Toyota's throne. To the average punter scrolling news headlines, this looks like a one-off shock, a freak month, a statistical fluke. But look at the trendline underneath, and the story is far more brutal. This isn't an upset. This is a takeover in slow motion, and Toyota's crown is now the target. Before we get into the numbers that Toyota's Australian executives are staring at right now, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss what's coming next. Now let's step back and look at exactly how a company that Australians openly mocked in 2022 came within a rounding error of taking the biggest scalp in the local car industry. Here's the raw scoreboard. In June 2026, Toyota sold 19,124 vehicles in Australia. BYD sold 18,881. That's a market share of 13.5% for a Chinese brand that, in June 2022, sold exactly 0 cars here. 0 to nearly #1 in 48 months. Let that sink in. Through the end of July 2026, the year-to-date leaderboard reads like this. Toyota 115,550, BYD 60,192, Ford 48,696. BYD is up 115% year-on-year. Ford is down 10.8%. That's not a competitive gap, that's a widening chasm, and the state-by-state breakdown is even more damning for the incumbents. In June, BYD was the best-selling brand, not the best-selling EV brand, the best-selling anything brand, in Victoria, Queensland, Tasmania and the ACT best-selling cars blog. 4 states and territories where Toyota had been effectively untouchable since John Howard was Prime Minister. Think about what that actually means. In the state that hosts the AFL Grand Final, more Australians bought a Chinese car in June than any single Japanese, Korean or American brand. That's not just a headline. So how did this happen so fast? The answer has a name, 2 names actually. And they tell you everything about how BYD engineered this ambush. Number 1, the BYD Shark 6, a plug-in hybrid dual-cab ute that BYD launched into what everyone assumed was the most patriotic, most tribal, most Aussie-loyal segment on the entire market, the tradies' ute, the Ford Ranger's home turf, the Toyota HiLux's spiritual heartland. The segment where changing brands was supposed to be like changing football teams, you just don't do it. Then the Shark 6 landed at around $57,900 drive away, undercut both the top HiLux and Ranger variants, and gave buyers 350 kilowatts of power, a 3,500 kilograms tow rating, and a 0 to 100 in 5.5 seconds, numbers a diesel HiLux physically cannot produce. BYD Automotive Australia. The result was carnage. In 2025 alone, BYD sold roughly 18,000 Shark 6s in Australia. Ford Ranger sales fell 7.4%, HiLux fell 4.8%. And here's the number that should terrify Toyota. In 2025, the BYD Shark 6 recorded 15,564 private sales in Australia, comfortably ahead of the HiLux's 12,529 private deliveries Drive Expedition portal. Private sales, not fleet, not government, not rental agencies buying in bulk. Real Australians walking into a real dealership and choosing a Chinese ute over a HiLux with their own money. That is the number that just broke a 25-year assumption about who Australian drivers trust. Name 2. The BYD Sealion 7, a mid-size electric SUV priced from $54,990 drive away, aimed directly at the Toyota RAV4 and the Tesla Model Y. BYD Automotive Australia. And in the first half of 2026, the Sealion 7 outsold the Tesla Model Y by more than 2 to 1. 2 models, 1 ute, 1 SUV. That's the entire crowbar BYD used to pry open the Australian market. Here's the part most commentators are missing. Ford didn't lose to BYD because of the Sealion 7 or the Atto 3 or the electric revolution. Ford lost to BYD because Ford Australia had put nearly all its eggs in one basket, and BYD kicked the basket over. Roughly 90% of Ford Australia's sales come from just 2 models, the Ranger and the Everest Drive. No small hatch, no mid-size sedan, no affordable SUV, no EV of any consequence. And the Ranger just sneezed hard. May 2026 Ranger sales fell 23.3% year-on-year. Ranger 6G. Year-to-date, Ranger is down about 8.2% drive, and every one of those buyers walking away from a Ranger is walking directly into a BYD Shark 6 showroom. Ford didn't just get outsold. Ford got structurally outflanked. When your entire business rests on one segment, and a competitor drops a cheaper, faster, more powerful, and more tax-efficient alternative into the middle of it, you don't fight back. You just bleed out. That's Ford's 2026 in one sentence. Now Toyota. Because here's where the story gets genuinely interesting. Toyota is not Ford. Toyota has depth. Toyota has hybrids. Toyota has the RAV4, the HiLux, the Land Cruiser, the Corolla, a portfolio so broad it's supposed to be immune to any single attack. And yet, Toyota's local sales are down 21.4% year-to-date in mid-2026 AFR. 21.4% in 1 year, from the most stable, most defensive, most reliable brand in the entire country. There are 3 nightmares keeping Toyota Australia's executives awake, and I want you to see them in order. Nightmare 1. Supply. Toyota admits its faltering first half of 2026 came down to shortages of the RAV4 and HiLux, the 2 vehicles it cannot afford to be short on. The new generation RAV4 didn't arrive until late March 2026, and Q1 RAV4 deliveries collapsed 72.2% year-on-year during the changeover. Car expert. Toyota has now scrambled to secure an extra 10,000 vehicles for the Australian market just to hit its revised 230,000 unit target for the year. Nightmare 2. Technology mix. Toyota's story in Australia has always been hybrid, not electric. That worked brilliantly for a decade. In 2026, it's starting to look like the wrong bet. Battery electric vehicles hit a record 23.3% market share in June 2026, up from 7.5% 2 years earlier. Best-selling cars blog. Toyota's electric BZ4X has been a footnote. BYD sells more Sealion 7s in a single month than Toyota sells BZ4Xs in a quarter. Nightmare 3. The price. The BYD Atto 1 is landing in Australia at around $30,000, the cheapest EV in the country. Reddit/electric vehicles. The Sealion 6 plug-in hybrid starts from around $36,762 car sales. Toyota simply cannot match those numbers with its current cost structure. And Toyota Australia knows it. One industry analyst quoted in the Australian Financial Review used the phrase "too late" to describe Toyota's counter-strategy AFR. Too late. About Toyota, in Australia, in 2026. Those 3 words together should not exist. Here's the part that separates a moment from a movement. Sales numbers alone don't take a market. Distribution takes a market. And this is where BYD has been quietly doing the boring, unglamorous work that nobody's been reporting on. BYD Australia is on track to have 150 dealerships by mid-2026, including expanded regional and rural coverage. the exact same regional and rural areas where Toyota's dominance was traditionally strongest. BYD has invested in a 20,000 square meter parts and logistics facility to end the "you can't get parts for Chinese cars" complaint that every dealer in Toowoomba was still telling customers 18 months ago. Translation: BYD isn't landing in Australia. BYD has landed. The occupation is now permanent. So does Toyota just fold? Absolutely not. And this is where the parallel to what Toyota is doing in China becomes fascinating. In China, Toyota partnered with BYD Home directly, using BYD Home blade battery inside a Toyota-badged sedan, the BZ3, to compete on Chinese soil. It was pragmatism over pride. Buy time, stay in the game, save R&D dollars for the next generation. In Australia, Toyota is trying something different. It's flooding the market with additional stock, accelerating the rollout of the BZ4X and Corolla Cross, and betting that the RAV4, hybrid-only, freshly redesigned, can claw back private buyers who don't actually want to plug anything. Early data suggests it's working. The RAV4 was Australia's #1 selling model in July 2026. But here's the trap. Every Toyota executive knows that BYD's next Australian move is a hybrid HiLux fighter and a hybrid RAV4 fighter, using the same PHEV tech that made the Shark 6 a killer. When those land, and they're coming in 2027, the hybrid moat that has protected Toyota for 25 years disappears overnight. That's what Toyota's real internal projections are staring at. Not the June 2026 gap of 243 cars, the 2027 gap of possibly 0. Zoom out, and here's the bigger pattern most casual observers are missing entirely. Australia is not a special case. Australia is a data point. BYD took 40% of the Thai EV market in 18 months. BYD took 72% of the Brazilian EV market in a single year. BYD is now the best-selling electric brand in Malaysia. Chinese brands hold more than 11% of European EV sales. Everywhere BYD lands, the local incumbents don't slow down, they collapse. Australia was supposed to be different, English-speaking, culturally aligned with Japan and the US, fiercely loyal to the HiLux, suspicious of Chinese products after 5 years of trade tension with Beijing. If any market was going to reject the BYD wave, it was this one. Instead, Australia became one of BYD's fastest conquests on record. 0 market share in 2022, #2 brand in 2026. And the message that sends to every other Western auto market watching is uncomfortable. If it happened here, in one of the most brand-loyal car markets on Earth, it's going to happen everywhere. So back to the question at the top of this video, is Toyota's #1 spot next? The honest answer, it depends entirely on what next means. In August, September, October 2026, no. Toyota's supply crisis is easing, the RAV4 is back, and BYD itself has admitted the June result was inflated by a one-time shipment of 5,000 cars arriving on a ship BYD literally owns. Expect Toyota to finish 2026 as Australia's #1 brand. Barely. But 2027, that's a different conversation. Because BYD has publicly stated it wants to be in Australia's top 3 by year-end 2026, and is quietly gunning for #1 after that. The Shark 6 gets a facelift and a range extender variant. The Atto 1 will land at around $30,000. The Sealion 8 is arriving as a direct Land Cruiser Prado competitor. And Toyota's counter, a proper competitive EV lineup and a plug-in hybrid HiLux, isn't landing in strength until 2027 at the earliest. That window, between now and mid-2027, is exactly where BYD plans to strike. Toyota isn't losing the war. Not yet. But it's fighting a war it never wanted, on a timeline it didn't set, against a competitor it underestimated for a decade. The bigger lesson here goes beyond one company or one market. 2 decades ago, the idea that a Chinese battery maker from Shenzhen could threaten Toyota's crown in the Aussie suburbs was actual comedy material. Today, it's a spreadsheet in the boardroom. The old rules, Brand loyalty, national manufacturing pride, you can't trust Chinese cars, are being replaced by new ones. Price, speed, technology, and a willingness to move at a tempo the incumbent simply cannot match. If this breakdown gave you value, smash that subscribe button so you don't miss our upcoming videos. So here's the question I want you to sit with. If you were buying a new car in Australia tomorrow with $55,000 in your pocket, is it still a HiLux or a Ranger? Or has your loyalty already quietly shifted to a Shark 6, a Sealion 7, or something else entirely? Drop your answer in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.